Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, April 16, 2019, and we are coming back from our recess, and we have a couple of items left on our agenda for today. The first is our public comment session. We set that up so that if people were coming over from Florence, the Florence area, they could give us their comments, but we've opened it up to any public comments. I've got 3 people signed up. I can't make out your handwriting entirely, but I'll do my very best to call on you in the order in which you've signed up. So when I call your name, please step forward. And we'll start that with Nancy McKimmons. Please step forward, and you, as well as all the other people giving public comment, will be given 3 minutes of public comment. We'll ask you to introduce yourself and where you live, and then after you finish telling us who you are and where you live, our vice chair will start the timer, and on your desk there, those 3 lights, green, yellow, and red. Green means talk, yellow means get ready to stop talking, and red means stop talking. And so you'll see the timer count down. So welcome. Please give your name and where you live, and then we'll start your 3 minutes.
Nancy.
I don't know.
Nancy McKimmons.
Let's see if we can
Oh, we might as well give you the
swap it out for you.
other microphone.
Nancy McKimmons, and I live both in Portland, Oregon, and on Collard Lake Way off of Collard Lake Road. Collard Lake Way being a not a public road. And I drove from Portland, leaving a caregiver situation in order to come down so that I could make my presence. I didn't expect to speak. And I also have some letters that people who were unable to attend that people would like you to know about and their concerns and comments. I purchased my first property there in 1966 with the first subdivision right out of college here in Eugene. And so I've been through a few chapters with our road, and I'm really currently concerned, obviously, with the repair of the road and all the things that have been said before, and hope very much, given the emergency nature of it, that the road can be made safe for all of the people off of Collard Lake Road, because it is the only way in and out. We've had some preparation for what to do when the big one hits, and some thoughts about that. And I was here last time you all talked about this. I came away very encouraged that you were considering taking this on and repairing the current issue. And I'm extremely grateful for your time and your thoughts about this, and hope that you can help us stay safe and be good citizens of Lane County. Thank you. And whom do I give this to?
Yeah, why don't you give that to Mr. Mokrzycki. And Peter, and your last name I can't read, so if there's anyone named Peter signed up, please come forward. Okay, and then followed by Frederick. So welcome. Please give your name and address, and we'll start the time.
My name is Peter Coots. I live at 88336 Collard Lake Road in Florence, Oregon. I have traveled this country and lived in many and various places. And in fact, as a kid, I used to work in fixing the roads in my town. We would get calls and we'd go out and fix the roads. I guess I'm very disturbed to see the lack of attention given to problem areas on our road that must be taken care of before some crazy accident takes place. And that's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Frederick.
Thank you for giving us a few minutes here today. Obviously, it's only 3 minutes, so I don't have much time. My name is Frederick Batson. I'm an attorney from Gleave Swearingen, 975 Oak, Eugene, Oregon. Represent Marilyn Atkins in this particular situation. Obviously, there's a number of other people here today that are substantially impacted by how you handle this road and how you view past actions by the county in handling this road. As was previously indicated before this work session was set at the previous public comment period, this road serves 6 subdivisions, multiple pieces of property besides those subdivisions, is the only way in and out, has a water tower that is served by a water line for Aceta Water District and is now in bad shape. The context of what you're having to address today relates to its designation and a unanimous vote by the county commissioners in 1976 as reflected in the county records and official minutes, voting unanimously to make Collard Lake Road a county road. That was in the official minutes, was adopted and approved unanimously. As you've heard, there's been an issue about whether or not that actually means anything. And I think that County Council was provided the task of going back and looking at the long history of this road. And as of, I think it was late Thursday, apparently there's a 200-page set of materials that were posted on this that obviously I can't address in the short time that's allowed here. Suffice it to say, it appears as though County Council has indicated that, in essence, that 1976 board resolution reflected in county minutes is essentially meaningless, that it's null, that it makes no difference. We obviously strongly disagree with that. We don't have time to go through the individual details. We did, however, prepare a letter with some of the attachments which we would like the county commissioners to consider in this process. I don't know if you want me to hand it to you.
Do you have copies for everybody?
We do.
Okay,
One
then
for staff.
hand them over to Commissioner Farr and he'll hand them down.
And there's one for staff as well.
Thank you.
Now, one of the things that's of serious concern here is the county adopted this, and in fact, after they adopted it, multiple landowners were asked by the county to dedicate their property, and they did. And the county staff went out and obtained multiple dedications, recorded them as deeds on the property of these individuals, at least from what I can tell, not for compensation, but because the county commissioners had voted to make this a county road. Those are now encumbrances on their property. They've given up the right-of-way and covers virtually the entire area. The only area that county council has pointed out that's potentially at issue is a very small notch, and it's in the map that we have attached to our documents. And if you look at it, it's really insignificant. There is a 50-foot right-of-way for this entire road. And in fact, as of the date of the 1976 resolution, that area had been used for more than 10 years as a public right-of-way. Statutes at that time specifically allowed it to be taken by prescription. I guess I'm supposed to stop talking.
Okay, thank you for your letter, and we will certainly accept it. And Commissioner Farr will hand
Let me
us.
ask a question. This is from an attorney, and I'll get council's opinion. Is this okay to pass to the commission?
Assume it's fine.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who signed up for public comment that hasn't signed up? Let me ask that again. Is there anybody else that wishes to make public comment who has not signed up? Okay, thank you very much. Now, next on our agenda is item 13A, and this is our work session on local access roads, emergency maintenance needs for Collard Lake Road and Green Creek Road Bridge. And coming to the table is Dan Hurley, our Director of our Lane County Public Works Department. Peggy Kepler, I guess, is right in the front row, Lane County Engineer. Steve Dingle is at the table. He's our Lane County Counsel. Lane County Administrator Steve Mokrajski, and Jay Blomay, did I pronounce your name right? Jay Blomay is our Lane County Surveyor. So with all these people here. We're going to have a work session on this topic, and Mr. Hurley, or Mr. Mokrajski, who is starting off?
I'm going to start out. I'm going to start off with just the background, and then the staff will fill in the more specific things about Collard Lake Road. First, hopefully you did get the memo that I prepared, and Mr. Blemay went back and found a lot of these documents you can see are original documents that were actually in a physical file that he located from his predecessor, which did fill in a number of the gaps. And basically, to summarize, and I understand that the residents believe that the vote that is reflected, the only part of that is Exhibit E on page 2 of Exhibit E, that was the resolution and order that made it a county road. That did not do that. That was, as I explained to them, when I look at this material, the board expressed a desire to do it, tasked staff with going out and doing it. They immediately, I think it's the next day or within a week of that meeting, there's a memo indicating that they should go out and get the necessary dedications. And if you look at Exhibit N, you'll see that that's a resolution and order that is would make a road a county road. And you'll see that it was pulled by then County Counsel, Mr. Van Vactor. When you look at the statute from 1976, the steps that had to take place couldn't take place in a board meeting in one vote because the neighbors, when the county was taking a road in, the first thing they had to do was the first thing they do in the statute, and they do it today too, is they send the surveyor out because taking Collard, the vote that the board took was meaningless. What is Collard Lake Road? The first thing that the county does is go out and survey the road and come up with a legal description. Then you contact, by statute, you contact all the abutting property owners and you give them notice that the county is going to take this into the county road system, and then you either the necessary right-of-way is obtained either by dedication, which is the neighbors, or the abutting property owners dedicate it, give it to the county, or the county, by agreement, buys it from them, or as a last resort, if the county can't buy it, then the county has the option of condemning it. The significance you'll see of the 50 feet is that in I think it was 1950, the legislature passed a law that said that any road taken into the county road system after a certain date in November of 1951 had to be had to be a total of 50 feet, or the board had to make specific, or the board would have to make specific findings accepting why they were taking the road with less than 50 feet of right-of-way. That's why you see that 50-foot number kicked around. As you go through, and I'm not going to repeat all this, but I think it is significant. The board, or the Public Works folks spent. They thought it was going to be taken into the county road system. That was and you'll notice that the correspondence that's from those early years after that vote talks about the proposed the proposed inclusion of Collard Lake as a county road. They did begin doing some maintenance on it in anticipation that it was going to be taken into the county road system. The hangup was one single property owner, Mrs. McElroy, and she. What apparently was an absentee landowner, and what she wanted was, in exchange for her dedication of the last 50 feet that was necessary to provide the continuous 50 feet of right-of-way, was an easement from her neighbor so that she would have different access to her property. The neighbor was unwilling to do this, and it was basically, they butted heads. And so for a number of years, the folks at the Public Works Department tried to get that situation resolved. At one point, they thought in 1983 that they had it resolved, and you'll see that from Exhibit N, they prepared the order, the resolution in order to take Collard Lake as a county county road. You'll see it has a legal description of what Collard Lake Road is. It has all the necessary things, and if you look down there on page 1, you'll see that the very first, the very last name is that Dorothy McElroy. Now, I wasn't around. I can see, though, that handwritten on this was that it was pulled, and it says not approved by Bill Van Vactor, do not go to BCC as of 3/83. What I've concluded from that is that he realized that they did not have the property dedicated from Mrs. McElroy. And so they didn't have the necessary right-of-way, so he pulled it. At that time, the neighbors did what they're doing here. There was concerns about the road, and so they went, and prior to a very significant board meeting in 1983, because they raised this issue of the neighbors, some of the neighbors thought that the county had accepted it as a road. The then surveyor, Mr. Azell, went and did an extensive search and concluded that it had never been accepted as a county road, that they basically were trying to get the necessary right-of-way. That culminated in Exhibit P, which is the Board of Commissioners meeting for September of 1983. You can see that there. And that resulted in the order that is listed as P. Now, this is the first time that we actually see a board order related to this. And I do understand for folks who don't deal in this world, you know that it takes, you could easily see this happening today where the board would say, we're going to take Collard Lake Road into the county system. You vote 5-0, and you'll notice that on that minutes, very significantly, the minutes that they rely on in Exhibit E, you'll see that right above that, Mr. Driver makes the statement, I'll come back with you with the necessary paperwork and for resubmittance of their decision. So in 1983, you look at this is only less than 6 years after or about 6 years after the board supposedly voted to make it a county road. You'll see the very first paragraph of that whereas, which is whereas Collard Lake Road is a local access road, which has been dedicated to the public and has never been improved to the minimum standard for acceptance, blah, blah, blah. And then you'll see in the last paragraph, the significance of the 1983 date is that prior to 1981, there were only two kinds of roads, county roads and public roads. And in 1980, the legislature created a new animal called a local access road. The significance of a local access road is that it came with a very important provision. It provided statutory immunity to the county for not providing maintenance. And it also required that if the county was to spend public monies on a local access road or an LAR, they had to make specific findings. They either had to say it was an emergency, they needed to have a report from the county engineer, and it had to describe the project that was going to be done. So when you look at the board order in Exhibit P, you'll see that it meets all of those requirements. It cites the statute that created the LARs, that's 368.031. Now, what I found interesting about this is that last paragraph. And you're all elected officials, and you can imagine this actually came when you look at the minutes. They had a meeting in July, and the board gave specific direction to staff to draft an order, and they were very specific about the language they wanted included in it. And it is the language that you find in the last paragraph. Because you'll see when you read the discussion of the minutes, the same conversation occurs over and over with the board. They learned that the county wanted the roads when the property was originally developed to be developed to county standards. The developer bitterly fought it for 3 or 4 years. At that point, the county said, forget it. They went to the Planning Commission and said, that's fine. We're not going to have this battle anymore, but we're going to put right on the plats that the county isn't going to maintain these roads. These will not be maintained by the county. So you'll see the reoccurring conversation all the way up to 2006 where there's frustration on the part of the board that these folks didn't want to do it, they didn't want to pay for this, and then they come back and they do this. And it's expressed in this last paragraph where the one that's signed by Mr. Rust, who was the chair at the time. It says that public works staff shall notify the benefiting property owners that this work and the reasons for it are being done is a single project. The public works staff shall also provide the benefiting owners with a list of options for future maintenance and maintenance funding. That this is the last expenditure of public funds on this road. And if they don't assume sufficient self-help to preserve the road's condition, the long-standing policy commitment to take the road into the county road status will be terminated. So at this point, there had been some work done by the county, and the reference is that they need to take their own self-help measures to preserve what the county had done in the past and what the county was about to do. And in the intervening years, there's a number of, you'll see in the materials, a group called I believe they're the Collard Lake Road Committee, tried to create a district, the equivalent of a LID, a special district for it. That did not succeed. I know council asked me the other day, the only thing I can find is that county council rejected without this is all the detail I could determine, that they did not approve of the structure of the road, or the structure of the district. They petitioned the city, or the county does not do it. It continues on back and forth until 1998, when there's again, it's Exhibit T in your materials. Once again, there's a crisis, if you will. The same conversation occurs with the board, and then they generate the board order in December of 1998, which again says it's a local access road, it's never been accepted, makes the same sort of findings necessary by the statute, and then does $150,000 worth of improvements. Now, the one thing that is different about this is that you'll notice the very last paragraph talks about that the Lane County Public Works Department will expend road funds as necessary to provide a continuing program of limited maintenance of Collard Lake Road following its repair. That became the bone of some contention because there was no further definition of what limited maintenance was. The county did do, and an engineer, I believe it was the county engineer, defined that as emergency repairs, keep clearing culverts, clearing vegetation, and responding to it as essentially, if you do on a county road, you do that on an annual basis, you do that every 2 or 3 years. That resulted in the issue coming back before the board in 2006. I've given you its Exhibit V is the board packet from that time. I've included the minutes, which are much more detailed than they were in the earlier days. And you'll see that the request was again made that it be taken into the county road system. That was, the board declined to do that. You'll see that various votes were taken. There was frustration expressed about the lack of a definition or a formal definition of what limited maintenance meant. And essentially what happened is the board said that they wanted Public Works to go out and again, the same exact thing, go out and talk to the benefited property owners, talk to them and assist them in forming a district of some sort to pay for the repairs. And that's essentially where it ended until recently. And again, it's the same sort of conversation that comes up. At the end of my memo, I've given you a very brief legal analysis. I can do a more detailed analysis, but it explains why the road, that simple vote could not take the road into the system. There's a case that was decided, it's actually Lane County, believe it or not, and it was an issue with Barger Road, and it was the same sort of situation where the board had taken some sort of oral action way back when, and then somebody objected. Property owner said, hey, you're not going to, I haven't dedicated this, you haven't condemned it, and you don't have my signature on this. I never got notice of this, and it essentially was stopping the necessary continuous right-of-way. Long story short, they went to court, and that's where the court went and talked about what the requirements were for taking a road in. And back, ironically, this is before the statute changed in 1980, so that decision actually applies the same law that applied in 1976. And one of the things that would have to be in the board orders are the things that are in that 1983 board order. None of those are of significance except the one about the notice. The court said that, you know, if there's an error in the legal description, that doesn't mean that it can be collaterally attacked. There's some other provisions can't be collaterally attacked, but the notice provision would. And so obviously that wasn't done with the order or with the vote that was taken in 1976. So this really is a policy decision for the board. The one thing I would point out to you is that it is of significance that a local access road is a local access road because of the statutory immunity that comes with the local access road. It's pretty obvious what the legislature did. They realized that there was a finite amount of resources. They realized counties couldn't afford to take all of these roads into the county road system and build them up to county standards, and that by having these, and you'll sometimes see it in the material referred to as substandard roads, that are obviously, there were issues about potential liability. For example, not clearing the vegetation. That's classic, right? So the vegetation doesn't get taken down every year. It ends up obscuring a line of sight. Someone has an accident, and then the person who has the accident claims the county was negligent for failing to, maintain the vegetation and the necessary line of sight. But at this point, the process is, or the decision for the board, in my opinion, is a policy decision. You're going to have to make a decision about what you want to do. I will say this, for the benefit of later boards and later county councils, that if the decision is made to keep it as a local access road, but provide direction to staff to do a certain kind of maintenance, be very specific with staff so that it goes into that order, so that it's very clear going forward what the expectation is. In other words, don't leave it, because you'll see in 2006, a number of the commissioners expressed frustration when the topic came up. They said, what does limited maintenance mean? And obviously the residents had one definition of what limited maintenance meant, and staff had a completely different definition of what it meant. So my advice would be, if you could go with the LAR and continue it with the limited maintenance, that we do an updated board order, not unlike the one in 1998, but with input from staff about very specific definition and description of what that limited maintenance would consist of. And I think the staff is here to talk more about the.
Well, do you want to take questions now, or Mr. Hurley, would you like to make your presentation before we ask questions?
We can take questions now.
Yeah, however you want to
Okay.
do it.
All right. Let me jump in and ask this question. When the board, by board order, said we're going to take this road into the county road system, but that didn't occur because one of the property owners didn't sign their deed, does that mean the county could, even as recently as today, direct staff to commence a taking of the property and thereby force the action that the previous board did? I don't know where the money would come for that, but that's a little bit separate question. Could we then say, oh, it's such a significant thing that we're going to have to impose this 50-foot right-of-way, and we're going to take all the property, and most of the property owners have apparently signed a quitclaim deed allowing us to do so. So we're really down to the last little bit, and then it's up to a negotiation or litigation or whatever to find out what that last property owner thinks their land is worth, and we could actually put through a county road in this area in place of the local access road.
Chair Sorensen, members of the board, yes, and that's a good question, because this was a number of things came together here, because one of the other things I ran into the material was, the obvious question was, why didn't they condemn this when they couldn't get, I'm assuming, I don't want to be presumptuous, but I'm kind of guessing that Mrs. McElroy is no longer among us, so I'm sure somebody else or her descendants own the property. And what happened is that the, which has come up in another context, so I'm very familiar with it, the Oregon voters amended the Oregon Constitution in 1980 and limited the use of gas tax proceeds. And apparently, what happened is that county council back in that time expressed some concern about the legality of spending road fund monies on a local access road to condemn a piece of a local access road. Because of the, and I assume it was just because this was a new kind of animal, a different kind of road. So I'm assuming the county council is being cautious, saying, hey, the voters just limited what we can spend road fund dollars on. And this statute actually says that we have to make all these special findings to even spend road fund dollars on it. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg. So as near as I can tell, the reason it wasn't condemned is because the county council opined that you couldn't spend road fund money to condemn non-county road properties. But yes, you could today. There's nothing that would legally prevent the count, from the board directing that, the surveyor going out, getting a legal description of the road that's going to be taken in, et cetera, and obtaining the necessary property. And if, like you said, if the person didn't dedicate it, if the person didn't sell it, then condemning it and going through.
And if, in the event that we did pursue that option, then the entire right-of-way of that 50-foot right-of-way would become then the public road. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. Now, another quick question. When the board approves board orders, it says, the board directs the county administrator to, and authorizes him to sign a contract. And then something happens between the time of the 5-0 vote authorizing that and the time that the contract is maybe submitted to legal office, and you say, wait a minute, we're not signing that. And then it never gets to the county administrator, and he never signs it. Mm-hmm. Does the fact that the Board of Commissioners has passed this order, does that mean that he still has to sign the contract?
No, I mean, that's actually a really good example. I was trying to think of some examples the other day. And so what happened is what happened here. So the board gave direction, we're going to accept Collard Lake Road as a county road. The staff went out to go do those things. And again, you'll notice it was a long process from 1976 to, I believe that proposed board order taking it in is March of 1983. And then that's when they didn't get the necessary property. And then it's shortly after that they have that, the board meeting. And I'm assuming that what happened there is the board came back and said, hey, you told us in 1976 you wanted to take Collard Lake Road into the county system as a county road. That was premised on an error, that all those other roads were already county roads. And so therefore, essentially, the view was that those county roads were essentially on an island. There was a county road out here, a non-county, public road here, but not a county road, and then these other ones, that was incorrect. And then the other one, they described that they were unable to get the necessary dedication from this person. And then that resulted in that 1983 board order where they said, okay, we'll spend $35,000, we'll do this, but we want the benefiting Public Works go out and talk to the neighbors or talk to the benefited property owners, tell them they're going to have to take care of this themselves. So essentially, they came back and reported that what you asked us to do was impossible. So good, that contract run is a good example. We've had situations where the board has directed staff to do a particular contract and they don't meet the insurance requirements. Right? So we say, you need to have $4 million, $2 million, and the person says, I don't have any insurance, or I have, $100,000 worth of insurance. We don't do the contract. Come back to the board, say, well, do you want us to sign this contract without the requisite number of, or with the required amount of insurance, or there's been a term in the contract that the county council finds unacceptable, and come back and say, look, here's what this term means. Do you still want us to sign it? My recommendation is no. Then the board can go ahead and do it. Just like in 1983, the board could have, instead of just leaving it as a local access road, they could have said, okay, we're going to make the necessary findings for an exception to take it into the county system, or they could have directed staff, go ahead and condemn, we'll pay for the, we'll find the money somewhere else and go ahead and condemn, start condemnation proceedings for that last piece.
One final question, at least for me on the first round here, is the property owners at the time signed quitclaim deeds to quitclaim their property to the county. So in the intervening years, has the county been the owner of those properties and portion of those properties, or has the quitclaim, the grantor of that quitclaim, have they been the owner of that property, and therefore they had to pay property taxes on that, as opposed to if we got the quitclaim deed, then we are the owner, and we, the people of Lane County, are exempt from the property taxes.
Right, and I don't know about the tax situation, but if they dedicated the land, if they dedicated the strip for the to the county, then the county would have it. It's never been returned. But I would point out, it's also never been used in the sense, because the county never widened the road and moved it up to county road standards.
Okay. All right, I'm sure other commissioners have plenty of questions and comments. Who wants to be next?
So I guess I'll ask a couple questions here. And, I think one of the things that's kind of obvious from the record is, yes, we did not complete the transaction to make this a public roadway, but by a unanimous vote, the board expressed its intent to make it a public roadway. So there was always an intention there. And Al Driver, who was I guess they didn't call it Department of Public Works then, they called it Department of Transportation. At that
That's his
time, was
title
the
on the-
department head. Yeah, I think that was his title, was Director of Department of Transportation when he wrote a lot of these memos. Actually recommended the board accept it with less than a 50-foot right-of-way in his memo to the board preceding that 5-0 vote. And I guess one of my first questions is, how hard would it be for us to justify, under the state statute, accepting a road with less than 50-foot right-of-way for a small piece where we couldn't get a dedication? The 50 foot's the current standard under statute, but the statute allows you to accept less than that with findings. And, and if it's just a small piece and doesn't have necessarily, if it's not a critical piece of the right-of-way, is there ability to write findings to support acceptance of a road with less than 50 foot of right-of-way?
Commissioner, it's my understanding that that's a possibility. We can do that. We can waive our standards. Any further information on that? But maybe, Peggy, do you want to come up and talk to that? I'll let our county engineer speak to that, but it's my understanding that that's a possibility.
Might pull that microphone that Mr. Hurley has, because
Yeah.
All right.
having a little microphone thing.
So it is possible to have a narrower right-of-way. One of the issues that we found in this particular property that was not dedicated is that it appears that there is a piece of the right-of-way that is needed within the existing asphalt area. And that's what you would want to take and avoid. You would want to make sure that your travelway was actually dedicated area. So that was one of the limitations.
So that leads me to a secondary question. Now it's been, when was the original subdivision put in, back in the 60s or something like that?
65.
So we're now into close to almost 60 years of the public traveling across that piece of private property. Isn't it prescriptive right-of-way at this point? And how hard would it be to convert that to public right-of-way?
You have to remember that
It's an open and
those
notorious
dedications.
use of it.
those dedications are public roads. Right now, the public is traveling on a public road.
Right.
Except for that small sliver from Mrs. McElroy.
Where we're going across
We actually have
private property
private
for
land
50 years.
that's jutting into the roadway. So it'd just be a matter of staff going in and acquiring that dedication and then just submitting that legal description to the board for acceptance as a county road, if that's what the board's wishes are.
It seems to me that at least there's a pretty strong argument to basically, I know we, as a public entity, we can't exercise, the ability just to take property by open and notorious use for 20, whatever it is, 10 years. I forget what the statute is for that. But there's also statute around, open use by the public across the piece of private property being considered an easement of some kind. So it seems like at the very least, there's a prescriptive easement across that property, even though it's, the asphalt exists outside the right-of-way there. So I'm kind of understand where apparently that Mr. Driver had mistakenly thought that there was county roads in these subdivisions, which kind of surprises me that we could have somebody that's a department head make the kind of statement in a memo that certain subdivisions contain county roads.
Not to throw stones, but I agree. I found that a little bit odd, but apparently if you read the materials, you'll see that the first person who made the misstatement was a county commissioner. He was the first, they were the first person to say these are county roads.
I'm shocked.
Subdivision, yes.
Yes, but we all know that county commissioners are prone to error.
Is it true the longer you're a commissioner, the more prone to error?
Yeah, because
Yeah, pretty much.
the memory starts fading, yeah?
Sorry to interrupt you.
But to your point, Commissioner Bozovich, I don't think there's any disagreement that it would be, one way or another, it would be possible to acquire that last piece of property if that's what the board's desire is.
Because, it wasn't just the fact that it was to try and connect two county roads with a piece of county road in between. There was multiple arguments made back in 76 about the number of lots and the amount of traffic that should be, a publicly maintained roadway. It still is sort of rewarding whoever that original developer was for going less than county standards on the roadway by taking it over, which I hate to do something like that because, I know other developers in that area, Benedict, that we have problems with, how they've done not building to standards, and we're still having arguments over flooding issues and all sorts of other things. But my guess is whoever did the original Collard Lake Road way back then is probably on, and that's, water long past the bridge at this point. But I'm still back to the intent of the board was to take that in with the information they had at the time in 1976. Even though they might have been given a little bit of misinformation about connecting county roads, the actual board minutes talk about the amount of traffic, not the connection to another county road. And so that was their driver. And the pulling of that one board order to actually accept the roadway in, we still don't understand the full motive, like we can't read Bill Van Vactor's mind at this point or why that actually got pulled and whether he was asked to pull it or whether he chose to pull it, whether it was about the right of way it got pulled or whether it was some other issue, but it still seems like we were working towards that. And I know that this is a problem roadway, obviously in the staff memo on the public works side, not the legal side, you guys have identified, this is a multi-million-dollar project to bring this road up to true standards. We've got other roads like Territorial that are, far more highly trafficked with slide issues and slope stabilization issues that we need to take care of with our roadway dollars than necessarily Collard Lake Road. But it seems that we have roadways in our system all over the county that we accept that we currently maintain as county roads. Berwyn Creek Road is just, if I got the right road name, I always get the road names mixed up over in that area. We just repaired a major slide issue on that one where it was slipping off in the Siuslaw because it's a dead-end road serving a bunch of people. But it's a county, it's designated as county road. It is not paved 24 feet of pavement. I don't know if it's got the full 50 feet of right-of-way the whole way, but it's been in the system so long that it's a substandard roadway. I could probably name, Nelson Mountain Road, Penn Road, Hall Road. I can go around my district and name road after road that we maintain that are not county standards. And we understand that we're never going to make them all the way up to county standards because we're not flush with the money we had when we paved Wolf Creek Road back in the day, which you probably never pave again now because of the lack of housing and traffic on it. But back when we had timber money, we paved Wolf Creek Road. I like it. I'm a cyclist, but that's, But so there's that whole issue. So for me, I'd like to continue exploring the idea of either a waiver of standards for right-of-way width, the possibility of re-engaging that property owner on the dedication. It's been enough time, you might just find that they're not going to try and force us to force their neighbor to do something. We may get that dedication. so we get the full 50-foot. But I think I'd like to see us move in that direction, try and get a cooperative full 50-foot. If we can't, maybe look at a waiver of the 50-foot, take the prescriptive easement for where the pavement's outside and deal with it that way. But I do think it's going to be based on the way our ability to maintain all the rest of our county roads. And we understand we're never going to pave all of Penn Road. We're never going to pave parts of Hall Road, and we're never going to pave, all of Berwyn Creek Road. But I think there are certain critical places, the $60,000 repair to the 2 critical slides on that road. I'm in support of moving ahead with that option. I don't think we've got the ability to go back and do the full 1.2 million or whatever it takes to repair all those failing slope areas. I mean, I've driven that road several times, and you're right, there's at least 8 areas that we're losing the slope because it was never built right in the first place. So that's just my thoughts.
Okay, anything further from commissioners? Yeah, I'll go ahead,
Just a
Commissioner Farr.
clarifying question, and Mr. Dingle, you said that the board by policy could make a change, but you recommended that would be very specific in the board order regarding the precise work that was going to be done on the road. Can you explain that just a little bit further?
The difference is, nothing prevents the board from, right now, from fixing dealing with the emergencies and whatnot. It doesn't have to change the status of the road to do that. From my perspective, the significance of keeping it as an LAR is that if you are not going to engineer it up to proper standards, you can fix it to the point that it's usable by the folks, but you still maintain the benefit of the immunity that comes with an LAR. If you convert it to a county road, and officially take it into the system as a county road, even if you take it in at less than whatever the standards are, now you take on the responsibility of maintaining it up to standards as a county road.
And if we
And if you don't, then you're liable.
And if we choose the board order route or the policy adjustment route, not bringing it up to county standards, it's entirely possible, in fact likely, that down the road we would have other slides and other localized incidents that would need to be addressed.
You'd have to talk to the engineer people. That's certainly the history of the road from the record. That
In addition to these 2 active slides, we have 8 other failing areas currently.
So fixing 2 slides today by policy change, by policy or by a board order, wouldn't solve the issue. It would just kind of delay it, postpone it, and then 2 years or a subsequent Board of Commissioners would be facing the same issue.
That's exactly what happened. In 1998, there was a huge flood. We were told this year that the flood we had this year was even larger than the flood in the winter of 1997. And by 1998, when the Board of Commissioners took up the Collard Lake Road problem, by then, Mr. Van Vactor was the county administrator, and Ms. Wilson was the county counsel, and this whole thing came up all over again. The board decided not to pursue all this major legal change in terms of forcing a property owner to give up the property or spending money to condemn the property. Rather, we just opted for the $150,000 to do an emergency repair. I'm not sure what that's called in the engineering world, but I'll just say a repair. And that solved the then problem, and the legal issues, I think, have, at least to my satisfaction, been resolved by what Mr. Dingle suggested. I know I'm quite concerned about us making a decision about this road in terms of bringing it into the county system and what the public access requirements would be in terms of sidewalks, bike lanes, and all kinds of other things that we would want to do in terms of bringing roads into the system. Seems like that's a lot of money. I'm more on the emergency, and I agree with Mr. Dingle, just have some recitation in the board order about the fact that, it's a public, it's a local access road, that we do obtain the immunity as a result of it being a local access road, that the neighbors have brought to our attention that there's an emergency exists, and what that emergency is, whether it's a slide or, more about it. And that way, the record of what we're doing is there, and I agree with Commissioner Bozievich that we ought to, help fix the problem, but it is still a local access road, and I don't think we should try to take it in unless we're going to have a review of all these local access roads, which is a big topic. And quite frankly, in 1976, this board had a lot more road fund money as a percentage of the total county resources. And that's been a really significant change over time. Commissioner Buck.
So it's funny how history repeats itself over and over and over again. I'm also in support of at least getting the emergency work done that is necessary so people can utilize the road. But again, I am concerned that this will come back again if we don't actually take a hardcore look at what we want to do and how we want to treat local access roads within the county. It's begging for a real solution ultimately in the end. And hopefully we will have a further discussion about those options in the future. I know we briefly touched on that last time we were talking about local access roads, but we're going to condemn future boards to the same discussion, and I think that ultimately is not the best use of our time and our staff time and the community's effort in order to come up with real solutions on their street. This is a bigger subject, and I personally would be in favor of having those discussions so we can get to the root cause and find some actual solutions that are meaningful and that can last the test of time.
And the one thing I would say is I did not mean to give up on, I don't know what the issue was in 1980 with the district that was proposed, but I can't see any legal restrictions to a local improvement district formed by the residents.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in favor of fixing it, getting the folks a safe way in and out. But we are actually condemning future commissions to the same discussion we're having today. They'll be trying to interpret the order that Commissioner Sorensen signs as to what was really meant by this, unless we do very specifically state in there as you have recommended. But even then, Mr. Dingell, somebody from an attorney's firm will come forward and say, well, we're not sure exactly what they meant. So, until we fix it completely and unequivocally, we are, Councillor Buck, we're kicking it down the road until we have a broader discussion as to how do we create a permanent fix for this. I'm definitely in favor of getting you guys home tonight. That's
Hey, Commissioner Burney, then Commissioner Bozievich.
Up until recently, from an external observer of government, I don't see how kicking it down the road is not business as usual. So, forgive me. One, other than the preciseness that council requires, I'm absolutely for taking care of the emergency of the two completely failed areas. Two, I think I know the root causes. The root causes are we've got a lot of roads out there. Some of them weren't built properly, and we don't have much money. Other than that, we'd love to fix everything, or at least I would, certainly my driveway. And number three, which I was going to say before Councilor mentioned this, as someone that has created for the purposes of development in a different setting completely, special districts, so that people are able, in fact, to get bonds to fix problems structurally correctly as a homeowners association or however, I would encourage that become a part of the discussion of a permanent fix. I don't know if you all agree with that or not, but it sounds like that's been attempted once before, if I heard that correctly. And it also sounds like at least a cursory analysis from council suggests you don't see any legal reasons for that not occurring. So there may be room to take care of the emergency now and to create a mechanism for structural stability moving forward.
Hey, go ahead, Jay.
Thank you. So, quick question. We own a lot of public roads right now. And like I've mentioned, not all of them are to full county standards. Somebody has an accident on one of these non-full public standard roads, Nelson Mountain Road, and comes after the county. Isn't there something called discretionary authority in our choices of where we spend our money? And doesn't that provide us some immunity from those kind of cases?
It does, Chair Sorensen, Commissioner Bozovich, it does. The difference between the types of immunity is the one that comes with an LAR is absolute, right? Someone will always argue about the discretionary immunity. It's been, my observation is that in the last 10 or 12 years, the courts have been chipping away at that. It's getting harder and harder it seems like more and more times they're declining to find, that there was discretionary immunity. So again, from the legal standpoint, I think my recommendation would be, like I said, to fix, nothing prevents you from fixing the problems and leaving it in or fixing the immediate issues, addressing those concerns as an LAR, maintaining the immunity, and then just like it was Commissioner Sorensen, if you read the 2006 minutes, this is like deja vu all over again. You're the one who said, will public works staff go out and work with those people to form a local improvement district? It's the same exact conversation. So I think that would be a longer term fix where some of those more long-term expensive repairs or improvements could be made.
Go ahead, Jay.
Follow up. So, I still am stuck on a couple of things. One is what the intent of the board was, which was clear that they wanted to make this a public road. Two, the county's involvement in platting and accepting the plats and subdivisions for 128 lots on that road. That's on Lane County. That it's not a typical LAR. I would argue this is, there's very few LARs that are this length and lead to 128 lots, and in this kind of area. So, I understand, that folks, maybe are interested in doing just the repair and leaving this in LAR because there is some concern about liability. But I think one of the things in the staff memo they talk about is one of the reasons why we're having some of these failures is the inability for the local neighborhood to do the continued maintenance. Things like crack sealing, vegetation control on some of these fill slopes. They mentioned there shouldn't be a bunch of trees. It should be deep-rooted shrubbery, and trying to get that maintained. Those sort of issues, even if you form an LID might help them do some of the capital repairs. Trying to keep up with those annual maintenance issues are going to be a problem for an LID. So for me, the long-term solution, if you don't want to see this keep coming back to the board every 10 years or so, is exploring taking this in as a county road. I don't know if we'll get there, but I would like to see the motion direct staff to try and continue that 1976 effort, see if they can finish the 50-foot right-of-way and whether we can get to that dedication and acceptance into the county system. I know it strains our maintenance dollars. It's another couple more miles of road we're going to be doing crack sealing, chip sealing on, but we do crack sealing, chip sealing on roads all over, Santa Clara and North Springfield that aren't up to county standard. So, and don't have sidewalks or bike lanes. Hayden Bridge, I know a lot of those neighborhoods there that are still in the county don't have sidewalks and bike lanes. They're open section roadways. So for me, I would like to see us, as part of the motion, direct staff to pursue the 1976 dedication again. And at the same time, authorize staff as an LAR to do the limited amount of work to repair the two current crisis places on that roadway for the 62,000. I think, that gets us towards a more permanent solution. If we can't get the right of way, or it turns out staff comes back and says we can't get enough right of way, because for me, it's not just about 50 feet. I'm curious about what kind of slope easements we have. I'm sorry, I'm going back to being an engineer. I've built roadways, and when you had cut and fill slopes, you had easements that went to the top and cut and fill slope, and usually a little bit beyond, so you could actually get a piece of equipment around the top and the bottom of the slope. I don't think there's any any slope easements, adjacent to this roadway at all that would allow us to go and maintain that vegetation on those slopes. So that's a whole nother issue that I think needs to be explored. I don't think just getting 50 feet of right-of-way is really sufficient. I think we need to have slope easements. I think there needs to be a bit more that comes from the adjacent properties before we entertain bringing this into the county system. But I'd like to see staff pursue that, at least with those neighbors, and there may be new ownership out there that's more willing to be cooperative. And that's kind of meets the intent of the board back in '76 in a 5-0 vote, and also gets us away from seeing this in another 5 years when one of those 8 other areas fails and 128 lots are going to be stranded. So it's just, it makes sense. One of the things that we saw in the fires down in California was there was a lot of one-way in, one-way out neighborhoods that were insufficient roadways that created a lot of the deaths. This is one of those areas that, we ought to be paying a little bit more attention to. How long do we let that sit out there? So that's my recommendation.
I'll just jump in here to say, ask a few questions about treating these property owners and these local access roads you get rid of local access road status to others. What is the total number of local access roads, and what would it cost to bring those up to county standards?
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon.
We do have energy on the board to solve this problem rather than just deal with the immediate thing on this road, but to, quote, solve this problem and not kick it down the road would require us to know what the cost of this would be relative to the whole solution to the local access road problem.
We know that we have 129 miles of local access roads now, and let me just remind the board that this is the second time we've talked on this topic, and the first was a general discussion on local access roads. The intent of this work session was to get your guidance specifically for emergency action on Collard Lake Road and Green Creek Road Bridge. So thank you for your initial comments and the support for emergency action on these 2 slides. That is our recommendation. But my bigger recommendation would be to wait until we finish an inventory. At our last meeting, the board gave direction to continue to explore this issue of local
To learn what the cost would be, for example.
Right, and so we're starting to work on preparing an inventory of all our local access roads and what condition they are in, what type of areas they serve. And I'd like to bring that back to you in June as far as we've gotten it at that point. And so we can see the whole issue, see if Collard Lake is very different than the rest of them, and so that we can prioritize them and give some sort of thresholds for when we might consider a road being taken in as a county road.
Okay, thank you. And now who else wants to be recognized? You or? No.
One last comment.
Okay, go ahead, Jay.
So I understand, with the 129 miles LARs, that there's some concern that we're going to make the exception for this road. I know of no other local access road that has an existing board vote directing staff to take it in as public roadway in its history. Now, so as you go through and do that inventory, you might want to look back and see if there's any other LARs that maybe have prior board direction to take it in. I am unaware of any other. So there is a real clear exception for this particular roadway. And second to that, I would be interested to know how many residential lots are served by some of the other LARs. You know, because I think 128 is right at the top end.
I think we will find that when we complete that inventory. The majority of the local access roads are under a half a mile, and this one's, significantly longer than that.
Okay, did you, were you in the queue?
Yeah, I just had a
Okay.
quick question, which kind of bounces off the other two, which was, do we know of any other local access roads with such urgent needs or addressing?
Not as urgent as these failures we have right now, but we have some other significant needs. There were the examples, so there's the other one that we need to consider today, which is the bridge replacement, but that's a huge ticket item. It's a $1.92 million bridge replacement. And if we take action on that, of course, that impacts our whole capital improvement plan. And so I'd like to put this in context with that. And we have some of the other examples that I showed at our last work session. There's one Aspen Street in the city of Springfield that's failing fairly bad, and it's in front of elementary school. So there's a significant need there. So I'd like to bring all these back to you and then try to put some recommendations of priorities.
And I would support that effort. It's nice to know, it would be nice to know contextually which ones need the most urgent attention, like Collard Lake Road. I have no doubt that they're high on that list, and being able to see, where we are on all of them in June, or approximately in June, would really help me to be able to analyze where we want to structurally put our funding in place.
Thank you.
Dan, I 100% agree with you. I sense also you know that where the board is directing. It sounds to me like you're going to provide information to allow us the big picture I'm asking you to be able to prioritize fixes, either within budget. It sounds to me like if in fact this discussion about special districts occurred 10 or 12 years ago, then shame on whoever for not bringing it to action one way or the other. But I'm suggesting that when you do bring that back to us and we look at our capacity and prioritize, including the information Commissioner Bozovich suggested, because then we'll see it in black and white in front of us. We'll see if this stands out. If so, what is the appropriate fix? And forgive me, but I still want to come back to special districts might be a part of the overall answer. And so I hope we can look at that too. And I truly don't know what I'm talking about now, but I would think that there might be a partnership between special districts in terms of some of the capital outlays required for structural integrity, combined with some relationship with county for tree maintenance and other things like that. So that's what I'll be looking for, and I understand I can't really look at that till we hear from you in June, but this gives you the go-ahead to take care of the immediate press, is my understanding.
Okay, so my take on this discussion is the board does want to make the decision to tap our road fund for the emergency maintenance for Collard Lake Road. What about the bridge part of this work session?
My recommendation would be to hold on that decision until we bring that prioritization list forward.
Go ahead with the Collard Lake Road for a specific dollar amount, or what?
I'll bring back a board order to you. We can bring it on consent. Our estimate is $62,000. We might want to have a little wiggle room in that, bringing that back.
Well, I think that would respond, at least on the short term, to the emergency that we're dealing with. And secondly, maybe this is going to be a suggestion for Mr. Dingell, is maybe to have a little bit of a recitation of a board's discussion and your legal opinion about the status of the road, so that can be helpful in the future. One other thing I mentioned in terms of the big picture and money, the board did identify the cost of bringing local access roads up to county standards in the vehicle registration tax proposal that we made to the public. So in the theme of not kicking things down the road, the board did make a proposal to the voters to, in part, help with some of the county road funding dilemmas, and the voters turned that down. And so one of the things that we're left with then is, well, we have to do the best we can, and fortunately, the legislature did pass a statewide gas tax increase that resulted in some funding coming in. So it's all a moving target, and I appreciate the discussion, but I do think we should have a motion to direct staff so that it's clearer, so what we're doing today.
And if I could, Chair, I was going to have Mr. Schumacher, I would like to try and deal with, at least in the interim, that issue of the limited maintenance, because I talked to Mr. Schumacher. We have been doing maintenance on it. We've been mowing and we've been doing some other stuff. And
On Collard Lake Road?
Collard Lake Road, pursuant to the 98.
Up until 2015.
Up until 2015. So.
Glad we clarified that.
That's a good clarification.
It would be good that that the board include, as that 98 order did, that there be limited maintenance until further order of the board. Only I would ask that you would define with some specificity what that is. And I don't know if Mr. Schumacher has a problem with I thought that the description that was in the 2006 board packet, where the engineer said, it's in the materials and it's italicized. It basically says every 2 or 3 years they'll come by, do vegetation management, they'll clean plugged culverts, and take steps necessary to preserve the work that had already been done by the county. I think that was, I can pull that language out. I can find it real quick, actually. But I don't know what the boards, or if Mr. Schumacher, who's the person that is, it's probably more important you listen to him, since he's the person that would be executing and interpreting what that means, so.
And I appreciate it, Commissioners. As much as a benefit to the residents on Collard Lake Road and our staff, clarity on that would be of value to us, knowing what would be determined as limited maintenance. Without that definition, maintenance is kind of the backbone of preservation of these road systems. So if we're not keeping up with that, and the direction in 15 was we stop that and only provide emergency response, we're behind the 8 ball on getting up on ditch maintenance, culvert openings, all the veg management. So some clarity there from the board would be whether it's an annual maintenance and we're just doing our operations and we come back as part of this recommendation from staff as to what that would be. We can put that together as well.
I'm almost of the view that you've heard the discussion and the concerns that we've expressed, and you come back with a proposed board order, and then we've completed our work session, but you guys then will come up with what you think is important. If unplugging the culverts is part of a way to limit future emergencies, then maybe that should be in there. Vegetation management, I'll leave that up to you as to what you're recommending. But my goal really at the end of this work session was to get the Board of Commissioners, either by a motion or by head nods, to direct staff to fix the current emergency. That was really all. I was kind of narrowing it down. All the rest of this stuff, it seems to me, is related to a larger discussion of what does the county do on local access roads, what is the kind of non-maintenance or emergency maintenance that we do, and maybe that should be deferred until we get on to as Commissioner Buck wanted to do, is to make a decision that really insulates the board from having to make more decisions, and it gives a roadmap, no pun intended, a roadmap to you guys as to what the policy would be.
And I was going to point out to the board that the county engineer in 2004, it's Exhibit V, page 4 of 38, said, my interpretation of board order, the 98 board order, is that we are to protect the 1999 investment in repairing and improving the road. In particular, we should, on occasion, clear vegetation, preserve the road width, clear culverts, clear drainage ditches, maintain a paved surface. I believe the key difference between maintaining a county local road and limited maintenance of Collard Road is the frequency of service, the response time afforded. For example, if we only perform the above activities on local roads once a year, we should only perform them every other or every third year on the LAR, except when an imminent failure is reported by the public and observed by our crews.
Well,
That's the language.
we don't-
That's how they interpreted that's how the 2004 county engineer
I think
interpreted.
what we're trying to do here is to have a more systematic approach to what can we afford to do on these 129 miles, and if it involves a school, maybe that's higher up on the maintenance level than if it doesn't. So that's, all I'm saying is I think that if we're going to talk about the future of these local access roads, obviously emergency maintenance or emergency preparation for true emergencies is going to be a part of the allocation of the dollars.
Thank you. And I think we understand the intent of the board at this time, and we'll bring a board order back to you with some proposed language.
Okay, and maybe we won't put it on for consent because if there is a need for input from the board, then we won't just imply that it's routine, because we're trying to make the emergency repair routine, and that's not controversial. But if you're going to include other things in that board order besides that, then it will become something that maybe we'll want to discuss and take public comment on. Okay, commissioners, anything further from commissioners?
I didn't know if we wanted to discuss Green Lane at all, as it was part of that. Although it sounds like the recommendation was do nothing, is that still?
Well, I think that it's up to the board as to whether we pursue it, but why don't you just tell us what your suggestion is?
The situation is the bridge is failing, it's scouring. We could bring our engineer up here to talk in more detail, but we looked at being able to repair it, and the recommendation is no, it needs to be replaced. Estimate of $1.92 million. It serves 5 households. So that's a large dollar for a few individuals. But it's significant because emergency vehicles cannot currently cross that bridge at the current load rating.
Where part of the county is it in?
Southwest of Veneta, is that correct?
It's off of Knight Road.
Okay. Any further questions about that recommendation? I guess we won't do that today. Okay. It's always good if you're going to spend $1.9 million that you know what you're going to do. That's what I've always felt. As my dad said, that's more than I make in a week.
But that was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. Okay.
Thank you for your time.
So thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And Mr. Mokrzycki's coming forward. I think what we want to do now is get a review of assignments. I have that as item 14. Oh,
Before we do, I appreciate everyone, the drive you made to be here, the day it took, the drive back, and thank you very much. I hope you see that we are taking this seriously.
we should have more coastal things in the summer, so you guys can warm up.
See you all Friday.
So, what do you have in terms of our review? I had a couple of work session item requests.
Right. I had four items, and then I have a quick update regarding the status of the flood event from last week. So 2 requests from Commissioner Buck. One, that staff analyze the needs and costs related to video conferencing at board meetings. And second, that we have a work session on the Lane County census, Lane County's role in the census, responsibilities and engagement opportunities. I heard late summer, early fall is the time frame, so August, September. And then 2 requests from Commissioner Burney. One, a work session on a Lane County climate action plan. This is separate from what's already scheduled for May 21st, an update from staff on current carbon footprint efforts, but a a follow-up then work session regarding the Lane County Climate Action Plan. And then the second request is a report on all the organizations that Lane County is a member of, the dues that we pay, and the descriptive benefits that we receive from those memberships. So those were the 4 assignments that I had.
Okay, anything? Okay, very good.
Right.
So I think we are done for the day.
Sorry,
Oh,
may I do
go-
a quick update on
Yep.
the flood?
Sorry, we
For
got to
you,
get the update, and then one more thing from me.
I didn't have this morning, and so just a quick recap. We had talked about the potential of an emergency declaration being needed. That at this point, we don't anticipate that will be needed. So I'm just going to briefly recap this, provided by our Lane County Emergency Manager, Patience. The flooding event from April 2019 has come to an end. The Army Corps has reported that all systems are returning to normal. A meeting is scheduled with the City of Springfield Emergency Manager and Keir Miller and Land Management to review the 42nd Street levee. The Oak Ridge levee that we call for Salmon Creek report has not yet been submitted as of this report that I just received earlier today. The Emergency Operations Center stood down today at 1100 hours. And then pending additional information from our area partners, we are not seeking a disaster declaration at this time. Just some additional information on that. As the board knows, as a result of the large volumes of rain that hit us on April 8th, the week of April 8th, Lane County Emergency Management created contingency plans and worked with the Army Corps to determine impacts to citizens downstream, developed evacuation plans, adjusted outflows from each dam, preventing catastrophic flooding from impacting hundreds of homes downstream. Lane County utilized local resources to respond to the flooding event, including search and rescue. Lane County Sheriff's Office dispatchers, public information officers, Fire Defense Board chiefs, Army Corps liaisons, and Lane County Public Works Department. We did not exhaust our local resources in responding to the event, and so we've not identified a need at this time for local disaster declaration. I think that's it, unless there are questions about the Salmon Creek levee or other items. Just wanted to provide that brief update for the board.
Okay, Commissioner Berning, then Commissioner Bozovich.
My boss, Ms. Diana Jones, told me that to make sure in your review it was specific so that staff really knew what the request was. So I just wanted to, as it related to the list of organizations that the county pays dues to, I was also requesting the mission of, the amount that we pay, the mission of that particular organization, and the benefits that accrue to the county as a result of our membership. Thank you.
Yep.
That was it. Thank you.
Just a question about the emergency declaration. One of the reasons, a county will request emergency declaration partly is to get outside resources, but also whether or not we're going to apply for FEMA reimbursement and the limits to that. And I can't remember what the dollar value is to damage to public facilities that is necessary to reach that threshold.
I think it's $10 million.
I think it's 10 million also, but I didn't know if we were able to combine that with Lynn and Benton County to apply so that some of these damages to culverts, damages to levees might be eligible for the 75% FEMA
And
reimbursement.
damages to public buildings such as
Yeah.
schools or utility or general government property.
The Lane County total, if I remember correctly, and I'm doing a poor impression of our emergency manager right now, is 1.5 million in damage to Lane County. And that would need to be combined with further damage in other counties to reach that larger state threshold. At this point, we haven't seen evidence that the damage to public infrastructure as a result of the flood will reach that minimum threshold. We didn't see yet at this point the same kind of impact to local utilities that we saw during the snowstorm, and some of those larger issues that were very apparent in early March. And so it does not appear at this point that the level of damage to public infrastructure puts us at that threshold. We also haven't seen widespread declarations from neighboring counties. A couple of them chose to declare an emergency, but not a disaster. And if I understand correctly the difference, that didn't necessarily put them in line for additional state resources either. It was more an acknowledgement that there were issues within the community as a result of the flooding. And so we're keeping an eye on it, of course. I know Patience is continuing to track that and gather information from our public partners, but at this point, we don't appear to have met that threshold.
Yeah, I just would like to explore whether or not it's possible to combine with Lynn and Benton to look to see if we can get over that 10 million threshold, because my guess is, if it's 1.5 to Lane County, there was some public utility damage in some of the flooding in some of the neighborhoods along Row River. And any school district, any city that saw damage or had to, there's other parts of that are eligible for reimbursement, even overtime hours responding. Fire districts, that had to do rescues, et cetera, may be eligible for some of that reimbursement. You start piecing a lot of that together, we may get to 10 million when we combine with 2 other counties, but I don't know if we have the ability to do that. I don't know if it's a per event or it has to be in a single jurisdiction. So I know that we scrapped and scrambled and finally put $10 million worth of damage together for the 2012 floods through Mapleton. And we're successful in getting reimbursement. It took getting everybody from the Mapleton Water District that lost a water main to a slide to a whole bunch of different issues and damage to our own roadways to get up to that limit, but we managed to get there. So just like to keep exploring that.
And we are continuing to gather information. Part of what is now possible for us to evaluate that the floodwaters have come down are some of the impacts to bridges and things like that we couldn't evaluate when we couldn't see them. And so we'll continue, and we'll also ask Patience to provide a more technical document on the options and the points at which you can declare and what that does. I'm certainly not the best person to answer those in detail for the board today, but we can get some additional clarification on that.
Boy, if only we hadn't inspected Green Lane prior to the flood event.
We did receive a request from the city of Oak Ridge. I saw a message come through from our emergency manager that had come from the mayor of Oak Ridge requesting the county's assistance in securing, in advocating to the state for reimbursement for the cost of repair to the Salmon Creek levee. I saw an invoice that came through from their contractor of $50,000. They said that was a partial bill. And so Oak Ridge has asked for our assistance in securing those state funds to help offset the costs that they've incurred through doing that work. And I think part of their argument is that there's a bridge, an ODOT bridge that they argue was saved as a result of some of the upstream work that they did there. So I think our intent is certainly to work with Oak Ridge to secure additional state funds to offset those costs.
Patience is actively working with the city of Oak Ridge, but at this point, it appears that she can do so without need for a formal declaration from the county. If that changes, you will be the first group of people to know that. But the lack of a declaration is not stopping her right now from assisting Oak Ridge and working to help them advocate.
The last thing I'd say, Mr. Chair, is just a broader reflection that we've talked with our team, continues to do a phenomenal job of responding to these incidences that happen so quickly and to really large extreme events. This between the snowstorm, welcome to the county, new commissioners, between the snowstorm and then the flooding event. We couldn't have brought Patience on at a better time. I'm really proud of the work that between all of our staff in the organization and our partners in the community, what the response looked like. But we also realize that there's opportunity for improvement there. And so we're looking forward to scheduling the emergency management training with the board this summer. And one of the things I've identified and I've talked to the folks on our team about is the need really to get that initial communication with the policy group, which constitutes the administrator, council, and the board is the policy group, that we get those initial communications right away so that you have, and then that regular channel of factual, regularly updated information so that you can respond to the people that are contacting you. Commissioner Buck, in particular, in the last two events, her district has been hit really hard and is getting contacts by Oak Ridge and others. And so we know we have an opportunity, as great as everyone has done in responding, we also have an opportunity to improve that speed and flow of information in these events.
And with the flood of this magnitude, certainly you've assessed the damage to the armory. The flood damage to the armory? Oh, wait, I'm sorry, there's no flood damage to the armory. Never mind.
Okay, so is there any other questions, comments from the board? The one thing I'll mention is that tomorrow at 1:30 is the board meeting for the Homes for Good. So all the commissioners are part of that. It's not part of our Board of Commissioners work, but it's part of our jobs as commissioners. So other than that, we are not meeting next week. Please stay in touch with Ms. Jones. It's highly unlikely that we will have a special meeting of the Board of Commissioners, but I always like to encourage commissioners to stay in touch with her, because if we do have to set up a special meeting, we'd like to know where everybody is. And other than that, I think we're good. So we're adjourned. Thank you.